There was something people rarely noticed about him. They noticed his kindness. They noticed his patience. They noticed how he always showed up, always listened, always smiled at the right moments. What they did not notice was how tired he was. Not the kind of tired that sleep could fix. Not the kind that disappeared after a weekend off. This was a deeper exhaustion, one that lived behind his eyes, one that settled into his chest and made even small decisions feel heavy. To the world, he was reliable. To his friends, he was safe. To his family, he was the one who never complained. But inside, something else was happening. Kindness, for him, was not a choice. It was a reflex, an instinct, a survival strategy he had learned so early in life that he no longer remembered when it began. As a child, he learned something without anyone ever saying it out loud. When he was agreeable, the room felt warmer. When he was helpful, adults smiled more. When he stayed quiet, when he didn't ask for much, when he didn't cause trouble, love came easier. And so his nervous system made a connection. Being kind meant being safe. Being easy meant being loved. No one taught him this directly. It was absorbed slowly, through patterns, through silence, through moments where affection appeared only when he made himself smaller. By the time he grew older, kindness was no longer something he did. It was who he was. Or at least, who he thought he had to be. As the years passed, people began to rely on him. They called when they needed to talk. They leaned on him when life became overwhelming. They asked for favors, for time, for emotional space. And he gave. He gave hours of listening. He gave energy he did not have. He gave reassurance while quietly unraveling inside. From the outside, it looked noble, admirable, even. But beneath every generous act, something unspoken was forming. A quiet tension. A subtle resentment. A question he never allowed himself to ask out loud. What about me? That question was dangerous. Because asking it felt selfish. And selfishness, he believed, was the opposite of love. So he buried it. Over time, the mask became heavier. The smile he wore began to feel like armor. The kindness he offered started to feel compulsory. And the distance between who he was and who he presented to the world grew wider. This was the dark side of kindness. Not the kind that manipulates or deceives, but the kind that erases. When kindness is driven by fear, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of being seen as difficult, it stops being generosity. It becomes self-abandonment. And self-abandonment always comes at a cost. Psychologists have a term for what happens next. Compassion fatigue. It describes what occurs when empathy is given without rest, without boundaries, without replenishment. Healthcare workers experience it. Teachers experience it. Caregivers experience it. But it is not limited to professions. It lives quietly inside people who identify as kind. People who say yes when they mean no. People who prioritize others at the expense of their own well-being. People who mistake endurance for virtue. Studies have shown that individuals who consistently put others first report higher levels of anxiety, depression, and even physical illness. The body keeps score. And kindness, when unchecked, becomes a slow erosion of the self. What made it even more painful was the paradox. The kinder he was, the more invisible he became. People stopped asking what he wanted. They assumed he would adapt. They assumed he would understand. His kindness taught the world that his needs were flexible, that his feelings were negotiable, that his presence was guaranteed. And invisibility, disguised as politeness, turned into loneliness. Loneliness that no one saw, because from the outside, he was never alone. Still, kindness itself was not the enemy. Genuine kindness, the kind that flows from fullness, is one of the most powerful forces humans possess. But there is a difference between kindness born from abundance and kindness born from fear. One heals. The other corrodes. One connects. The other depletes. Neuroscience helps explain why. The human brain is wired for empathy through a system called mirror neurons. When we witness another person's pain, our brain activates as if we are experiencing it ourselves. This is why compassion feels natural. But the brain does not distinguish between healthy empathy and destructive overexposure. When someone constantly absorbs the emotions of others without boundaries, the nervous system remains in a state of chronic stress. Over time, this leads to emotional exhaustion, weakened immunity, and burnout. In other words, the brain is not built for endless self-sacrifice. It is built for balance. When that balance is lost, suppressed emotions do not disappear. They collect. They ferment. And eventually, they surface. Sometimes as irritability. Sometimes as passive aggression. Sometimes as sudden anger that feels foreign and frightening. He would catch himself snapping over small things, withdrawing without explanation, feeling resentment toward people he cared about, and then guilt would follow. Because kind people are not supposed to feel anger. But anger, ignored, becomes something darker. Not because it is evil, but because it has been denied a voice. Kindness without honesty creates the perfect conditions for inner conflict. Every unspoken no, every swallowed boundary, every truth left unsaid, they accumulate. And abandonment of the self always demands recognition. The roots of this pattern were cultural as much as personal. From a young age, many people are taught that goodness equals agreeableness. That love must be earned. That being easy is safer than being authentic. Phrases like, good girl, or, nice guy, carry hidden expectations. Don't make waves. Don't demand too much. Don't disrupt harmony. But real kindness is not about disappearing. Real kindness includes the self. If kindness costs mental health, joy, and identity, it has crossed into something else. Self-neglect dressed as virtue. There is a concept in psychology known as pathological altruism. It describes situations where helping causes harm, either to the giver or the receiver. When someone sacrifices their health to care for others. When constant rescuing prevents growth. When generosity becomes dependency. It looks like goodness, but it creates imbalance. And imbalance breeds resentment. The turning point came quietly. Not in a dramatic confrontation. Not in a moment of rage. But in a realization. He noticed how exhausted he felt after every interaction. How his body tensed before responding to requests. How his yes no longer felt honest. And for the first time, he asked himself a difficult question. Was his kindness coming from love, or from fear? The answer was uncomfortable. So was the solution. Kindness had to begin with him. Not in a selfish way, but in an honest one. Boundaries, he learned, were not rejection. They were clarity. A boundary simply said, this is what I can give, and this is what I cannot. Psychologists describe boundaries as the invisible lines that define where one person ends and another begins. Without them, relationships dissolve into silent suffering. With them, relationships gain depth. People who set healthy boundaries are often seen as more trustworthy. Because when they say yes, they mean it. Authenticity is magnetic. Saying no felt terrifying at first. It challenged the identity he had built his life around. Some people resisted. Some pulled away. Some accused him of changing. And it hurt. But he began to see something clearly. Relationships that depended on his exhaustion were never balanced to begin with. Letting them go was not cruelty. It was survival. He learned to pause before answering. To check in with his body. To ask if he truly had the capacity. He learned that a gentle no could coexist with compassion. I care about you, but I can't do this right now. The world did not collapse. In fact, something unexpected happened. His yes began to carry weight. His kindness felt lighter. He also began to tend to himself. Rest without guilt. Joy without justification. Silence without apology. He allowed himself to feel anger, sadness, frustration, not as enemies, but as signals. They pointed toward balance, toward truth. Kindness, he realized, had been a mask for a long time, a performance to secure safety. But masks are heavy, and eventually, they suffocate the person beneath them. Removing the mask did not make him less kind. It made him real. There is a saying, if you want to know who someone truly is, look at how they treat themselves when no one is watching. That is where authentic kindness begins. Not in approval, not in praise, but in quiet choices. Do you rest when you are tired? Do you speak to yourself with compassion? Do you honor your limits? Because kindness that excludes the self is fragile. But kindness rooted in self-respect is powerful. It flows from abundance, not depletion. It invites connection, not dependence. The dark side of kindness was never kindness itself. It was fear. Fear of being unlovable without sacrifice. Fear of being rejected for honesty. Fear of taking up space. Once that fear was faced, something changed. Kindness stopped being a survival strategy. It became a choice. And choice is freedom. At the end of the day, the monster within kind people is not anger, not boundaries, not self-protection. The real monster is neglect. And once it is seen, once the mask is set down, kindness does not disappear. It deepens. It sharpens. It becomes the kind of compassion that keeps both others and the self alive. That is the kind of kindness the world needs. And that is the kind of truth hidden mind AI exists to explore.